I was halfway up the creaking staircase of my grandfather's house when I heard my aunt's voice drift through the cracked door of his bedroom. "She's only here because she's waiting for him to die," she whispered. "You know how these 25-year-olds are. They want everything fast. She's pretending to care, but she's really circling like a vulture." I froze. The rest of her words dissolved into the pounding in my ears, but the tone. I understood that tone. That syrupy, poisonous kind of certainty people use when they're trying to convince someone of something deeply untrue. Grandpa Henry said nothing in response. The silence that followed felt like it stretched on forever. I stood completely still, my hand pressed against the wall, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. Because if I could hear them, then he could too. And for a horrifying moment I wondered if he believed her. When his reply finally came, it wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was worse. "Maybe you're right," he murmured. My heart dropped clean through the floor. I backed away from the door so fast my heel hit the stair rail. I almost fell. I didn't want to hear more, didn't want her lies to sink any deeper into him. I took a shaky breath and forced myself to keep descending the stairs, each creak louder than the last. "My name is Lily. I'm 25 years old. And for the past 9 months, I've been living with my 82-year-old grandfather in his old brick house on the outskirts of Savannah. Not because I needed a place to stay. Not because I expected anything from him. But because when the rest of my family decided that visiting him twice a month was good enough, someone had to step in and make sure he wasn't alone." I reached the bottom of the stairs and pushed a hand through my hair, trying to steady myself. I had promised myself I would never eavesdrop on family conversations, but this wasn't on purpose. I had been on my way up to bring Grandpa a fresh pitcher of water, the same way I did every afternoon. And now I was standing in the hallway with my pulse racing, wondering how many times they had said things like this when I wasn't around. When my aunt finally emerged from his room, she didn't see me at first. She was adjusting her purse strap, looking smug in that way people look when they think they've accomplished something righteous. Then she spotted me. "Oh," she said, startled for half a second before recovering with a tight little smile. "Lily, I didn't know you were home." I didn't trust myself to speak, so I just nodded. Her eyes flicked over me the same way someone might look at a bug they weren't sure they wanted to step on. "Your grandfather's resting. Don't bother him. He needs his peace." Peace. That was not what she had been giving him. She swept past me and down the hall, leaving a trail of perfume behind her. My chest tightened as I watched her leave. Because the truth was painfully simple. My family didn't see what I did. They didn't see the nights I stayed up helping him breathe through a coughing fit. They didn't see the mornings I walked him from room to room, one slow step at a time. They didn't see the grocery runs, the medication schedules, the endless appointments, the quiet afternoons when he told me stories from his childhood that nobody else cared to listen to. They only saw one thing. A 25-year-old woman living in the house of a man with a paid-off property, a full pension and a lifetime's worth of savings. And in their minds that meant only one thing too. That I must be waiting for him to die so I could take something from him. But I wasn't the one counting his money. I wasn't the one hinting about the will. I wasn't the one reminding him every holiday who deserved what. I was the one sitting beside him on the porch every evening listening to the crickets. The one who held his hand when he felt dizzy. The one who cut his food when his arthritis flared up. The one who read his favorite mystery novels out loud because his eyesight had gotten too weak. I was the one who loved him. And yet, as I stood there in that hallway, staring up the stairs toward his room, her words replayed in my mind like a poison-coated echo. "She's only here because she's waiting for him to die." I wished I could ignore it. I wished I could pretend it hadn't stuck under my skin like a thorn. But I couldn't. Because the worst part wasn't what she said. The worst part was what he whispered back. "Maybe you're right." I didn't know what they had told him before today. I didn't know what stories they'd planted while I was out buying his groceries or sitting at his doctor's appointments or cleaning his kitchen. But I knew one thing for certain. Whatever my family had been telling him, they were starting to work. And that terrified me more than anything. When someone you love begins to doubt your intentions, it doesn't matter how much you've done for them. It only matters what they've been convinced to believe. I tightened my grip on the banister, willing myself not to break down. Because if they were poisoning him against me, then I needed to find out how deep the damage went. But I had no idea. None. That the truth would be far worse than I imagined. By the time I carried the pitcher of water back upstairs, my hands had finally stopped shaking. Not completely. Just enough that the ice inside didn't rattle so loudly that it announced my presence before I even reached his room. Grandpa was sitting up against his pillows when I pushed the door open. He wasn't sleeping. He wasn't even resting. He was staring at the window with a hollow sort of focus, as if the world outside made more sense than the one inside his own house. "Hey, Grandpa," I said softly. "Brought you some fresh water." He nodded without looking at me. "Just set it there, sweetheart." Sweetheart. He always called me that. But this time the word felt thinner. Like it had to squeeze past something else before it reached his mouth. I set the pitcher down and stood at the foot of the bed, waiting for him to look at me. He didn't. He just kept staring at the window, his jaw moving slightly like he was chewing on something he didn't want to swallow. "You okay?" I asked. That's when he finally turned his head. "Lily," he said quietly, "why are you really here?" His voice wasn't sharp. It wasn't angry. It wasn't anything except tired. So impossibly tired that it cracked something in my chest. "What do you mean?" I asked. He studied me for several long seconds. His eyes, usually so warm even when he was in pain, looked clouded with confusion and something dangerously close to suspicion. "I'm old," he said. "I'm not stupid. I know what my children think. I know what they're saying. They tell me things when you're out." My throat tightened. He wasn't hiding it. He wasn't sugarcoating it. He was telling me plainly. "They've been talking about you. A lot." I pulled a chair closer to the bed, but I didn't sit yet. I needed to see his face. "And what exactly are they saying?" I asked, though I already knew part of it. I had just heard part of it. He sighed, the kind of sigh that takes years off a person. "That you're a sweet girl," he said, "but you're young. 25. Whole life ahead of you. They say you should be out there, dating, traveling, working, doing whatever young people do. Not stuck here with an old man who's slowing down." "That's not why I'm here," I said immediately. He nodded, but it wasn't a believing nod. It was the kind of nod people give when they're trying to be polite. "They also said," he continued, "that, well, maybe you have your reasons. Maybe you're thinking about the future. The house. The insurance. The savings." There was the real wound. They had told him I was after his money. And he had started to wonder if it was true. My breath caught in my chest. "Grandpa, is that what you think?" "I don't know what to think," he whispered. I felt that sentence in my bones. Not because he doubted me. People doubt each other all the time. It was because he had always been the one person in my entire family who never doubted me. Not once. Till now. I sat down slowly, my legs suddenly weak beneath me. "Grandpa," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was pounding, "you know why I'm here." He looked at me for a long, uncomfortable moment. "I used to," he said. "I used to be sure." That hurt more than if he'd yelled. And then he added, quietly but unmistakably, "But they've been telling me things, Lily. Things that make me wonder." I swallowed hard. "Wonder what?" He hesitated. That hesitation shredded me. "That maybe you're staying because you expect something." My breath hitched. "Expect what?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The house. The will. The inheritance. I leaned forward and took a trembling breath. "I don't care about any of that," I said, my voice breaking despite my best attempt to control it. "I'm here because I love you. Because I don't want you to be alone. Because you're my grandfather and none of them, act like they remember what that means." He looked down at his hands. "They come here," he said, "and tell me you're hiding something. That you're being overly sweet because you want me to leave something behind for you. They say you're clever. That you're patient. That you're playing the long game." I felt sick. "They don't know me," I whispered. "They should," he replied. Something tightened in my chest. Something old and painful. "Do you believe them?" I asked. His eyes lifted to mine. Old eyes. Tired eyes. Eyes that had been fed poison, drip by drip. "I don't know." That was the moment, right then, that everything tilted. That the floor dropped out from under me. That the fragile trust between us trembled under the weight of their lies. Because for the first time since I'd moved into this house, I realized I was no longer just taking care of my grandfather. I was fighting for him. Fighting for his mind. For his trust. For the bond we had built long before he ever needed my help. And I had no idea how deep their influence went. Or how much damage had already been done. The next morning I woke up to the sound of silverware clinking downstairs. I was wrong. Grandpa never went downstairs before noon. His arthritis made the stairs painful and he usually waited for me to help him. Hearing him in the kitchen at 7 a.m. meant one thing. He hadn't slept. He'd been thinking. I threw on a sweatshirt and hurried down. The sight that greeted me made my stomach twist. He was standing in front of the sink trying to wash the same plate over and over, as if scrubbing it clean could scrub away yesterday's conversation. His hands shook and soapy water dripped onto the floor. "Grandpa," I said gently, "you don't have to do that. I've got it." He didn't look at me. "You do everything around here." "That's what family does," I replied. He set the plate down slowly, like it suddenly weighed 20 pounds, and turned toward me. "I talked to your mother last night." My heart sank. Of course he had. "And what did she say?" I asked, bracing myself. "That I shouldn't be so trusting." He paused. "That you're young and impressionable. That you're being influenced by people online. That you're living with me because you're trying to figure out your career and don't want to pay rent." I blinked. "What?" He sighed. "She says you've always been financially irresponsible." I laughed, not because it was funny but because the absurdity hit me like a slap. I had been paying my own bills since I was 19. I had never once borrowed money from anyone. Half the groceries in this house were paid with my debit card. "Financially irresponsible," I repeated under my breath. His eyes flicked over me, searching my face. "She also said that you've been going through my office." I felt the air leave my lungs. "I haven't touched your office," I said firmly. "She said you were looking for papers, maybe the will." My chest tightened. "Grandpa, I would never." "I know," he said quickly, almost too quickly. Then he corrected himself. I thought I knew." The sentence cut straight through me. He was trying to protect my feelings and failing. Or maybe he wasn't failing. Maybe the damage was simply too deep already. "Grandpa," I said quietly, "why would I ever look for your will? I don't even know where it is." That wasn't an exaggeration. I genuinely didn't. He rubbed his forehead. "Your mother said Brooke saw you near my office door last month." I stared at him. "We were looking for wrapping paper," she said. "I don't care what she said," I interrupted. My voice came out sharper than I intended and he flinched. Immediately, guilt stabbed me. I'd never raised my voice at him before. Not once. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't mean to snap." "No," he said, his tone weary. "I understand. You're frustrated." I swallowed. That was an understatement. "Grandpa," I said, choosing every word carefully, "they're lying to you." He didn't argue. He didn't agree. He just looked at me with eyes full of doubt and confusion. "How can you be so sure?" he finally asked. "Because I'm telling the truth," I said. "And they're not." He shook his head. "Everyone is telling me their version. Everyone sounds convinced. And as much as I want to trust you, Lily, they're my children. I have known them longer." Right. There was. The sentence that had been hanging in the air since yesterday. "They're his children. I'm just his granddaughter. And," he added in a low voice, "they say you've been hoping to secure your future." I closed my eyes for a moment. Then I stepped closer to him, letting him see every bit of hurt, frustration, and honesty on my face. "Grandpa," I said softly, "if all I wanted was money, do you really think I'd spend 9 months helping you shower, helping you dress, driving you to doctors, cooking, cleaning, giving up weekends, giving up nights, giving up sleep?" He didn't answer. "Do you think Brooke or Aunt Melanie or Mom would do that?" I asked. "Do you think they'd move in, put their lives on hold, and care for you the way I have? Without being asked. Without complaining." His gaze dropped to the floor. A long, heavy silence filled the kitchen. Then he whispered so quietly it almost didn't reach me. "I don't know who to trust anymore." My throat tightened. Because that sentence, far more than any accusation, told me exactly how much influence my family had gained over him. And exactly how far they were willing to go. I took a step closer. "Then let me prove myself." He looked up, tired and defeated. "How?" I opened my mouth. Then froze. Because I didn't have an answer. Not one he'd believe. Not one strong enough to cut through the lies they'd been feeding him for months. I don't know yet," I admitted. He nodded as if he expected that. He turned away again slowly, painfully, and reached for the plate in the sink. "Let me wash this," he said quietly. "Please," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Just let me help." He didn't answer. And in that moment, watching his frail hands shake as he forced himself to wash a plate he didn't even need washed, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This wasn't just manipulation. My family wasn't trying to turn him against me. They were trying to turn him away from me. Bit by bit. Day by day. Until I was no longer the person he trusted, but the person he feared. And they were succeeding. For the next week it felt like the house itself was changing. Not physically. Not in any way the eye could see. But the air. The atmosphere. The unspoken things between us. Everything had shifted. Grandpa grew quiet. Quiet in a different way. Not tired. Not sick. Guarded. He watched me the way people watch someone they want to trust, but can't quite find the foothold anymore. And every time he hesitated before answering me, every time he double-checked something I said, every time he paused as if he needed to replay my words in his mind, I could hear my mother's voice behind it. Aunt Melanie's voice behind it. Brooke's voice behind it. Drip by drip. Lie by lie. Poison sinks in slowly at first. And then all at once. By Thursday evening I reached a breaking point. I walked into his study, something I normally never did unless he called me, and found bills scattered across his desk. Not because he needed help. Not because he was balancing anything. But as he was checking. Double-checking. Triple-checking. As if he expected to find evidence of something I'd stolen or hidden. He looked up, startled, as if caught doing something shameful. "Oh," he said. "Lily. I didn't hear you come in. What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "Just looking through some things," he murmured. "Making sure everything is in order." Everything in order. Right. That was the phrase people use when they're preparing to die, or when someone has convinced them that they should. I stepped closer. "Do you need help with anything?" He hesitated. A long, painful hesitation. "No," he said. "I've got it." He had never said that to me before. Not in 9 months. "I can organize these for you," I offered gently. "Sort them by date. You know I don't mind." He stiffened. I said, "I've got it." There was no anger in his voice. Just fear. Fear of letting me near his papers. Fear of being wrong about me. Fear of what people were telling him could be true. I felt the words rising in my chest. Sharp, hot, ready to spill out. "Grandpa, if you don't trust me anymore, just say it." But I swallowed them. Because if I said that, he would retreat even further. Instead, I forced a small smile. "Hey, I'll start dinner." He nodded without looking up, his fingers trembling slightly as he straightened a stack of envelopes. I left the room quietly, but the sound of him sorting, paper shuffling, drawers opening and closing, followed me down the hall like ghosts tapping on the walls. At dinner he barely spoke. Just pushed food around on his plate, staring past me. "Is something wrong?" finally asked. He looked up slowly. Very slowly. "Did you go into my office earlier?" "I knocked," I said. "The door was open." He nodded, though the tension in his shoulders didn't ease. "They told me to keep that door closed," he whispered. My stomach twisted. "Who?" He didn't answer, but I didn't need him to. I already knew. My family had told him to protect his office. From me. He reached for his napkin, but his hand trembled so badly that it slipped to the floor. I immediately moved to pick it up. "Don't," he said sharply. I froze. The word hit me like a slap. His eyes widened at his own tone, regret hitting him instantly, but the damage was already done. "I didn't mean," he began. "It's okay," I said softly. "Really?" But it wasn't. Because in all the months I'd cared for him, held his arm on the stairs, tied his shoes, changed his bedding, driven him everywhere, he had never once flinched away from my touch. Until tonight. He pushed his chair back and stood up slowly, gripping the table edge for balance. "I think I'll go to bed early," he murmured. "I can help you upstairs." "That's not necessary. I can manage." I watched him struggle to straighten, his knees wobbling, his breath uneven. He couldn't manage. He absolutely couldn't. "Grandpa." I said, "I can manage," he repeated, not meeting my eyes. And then he walked away. Unsteady. Exhausted. Afraid. Afraid of me. I stood there long after he'd disappeared up the stairs, my hands gripping the back of my chair hard enough that my knuckles went white. They were winning. Every lie they whispered. Every seed they planted. Every moment they twisted. They were turning him against me. Piece by piece. Brick by brick. I had been so busy caring for him physically that I hadn't noticed the battle happening behind closed doors. The slow, quiet restructuring of his trust. And now that I finally saw it. Now that the truth was staring me dead in the face. I had no idea how to stop it. But the very next day something happened that made everything clearer. Something that showed me just how far my family was willing to go. And just how close they were to taking him away from me completely. The next afternoon, just as I was chopping vegetables for dinner, I heard a car door slam outside. Not the gentle thud of a neighbor. Not the slow, careful closing my grandfather did. This was sharp. Purposeful. The kind of slam that announces itself. I wiped my hands on a towel and stepped into the hallway just as the front door swung open. My mother walked in first. Behind her, Aunt Melanie. And behind her, Brooke. My chest tightened instantly. They never came together. Not unless something was wrong. Or unless they were planning something. "Lily," my mother said, her voice bright in a way that carried the unmistakable edge of rehearsed sweetness. "We're here to see your grandfather." I nodded slowly. "He's resting. He had a long morning." "Oh," she said, waving her hand as if that were irrelevant. "He'll want to see us." Aunt Melanie sniffed, looking around the house like she expected to find dust in the corners. Brooke stood near the doorway, arms crossed over her chest, her expression tight in a way that told me this wasn't a casual visit. She wasn't wearing her usual carefully curated smile. She looked determined. "Is everything okay?" I asked. My mother ignored the question, stepping past me toward the stairs. "We'll talk to him first." "No," I said, blocking the base of the steps before I even realized I'd moved. "He's resting. You can see him when he wakes up." The three of them exchanged a look. Quick, controlled, quiet, but I caught it. And my stomach dropped. "What's going on?" I repeated. This time Brooke stepped forward. "We're here because we're worried about Grandpa." Her tone wasn't gentle. It wasn't emotional. It was calculated. A red flag. "What do you mean worried?" I asked. "Well," she glanced at my mother. "We've been hearing things." "Hearing what?" I demanded. Silent looks again. "Oh, for heaven's sake," Aunt Melanie said with a theatrical sigh. "We're worried because he seems confused lately. Forgetful. Vulnerable." I stiffened. "He's 82. Of course he has moments." "That's exactly why we're concerned," my mother said. "Because someone young and impressionable is living with him." The implication hit me like a physical blow. "You think I'm taking advantage of him?" I whispered. Brooke lifted a shoulder. "We think something is off." My mother placed a hand dramatically on the banister. "We're not accusing you, Lily. But the situation isn't normal. Young people don't just give up their lives to take care of old men unless there's a reason." I stared at her, stunned. Aunt Melanie chimed in, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "We worry that maybe you've become attached to the lifestyle here. The house. The ease of everything being provided." "The ease." I echoed sharply. I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or both. Nothing about this was easy. Not the endless medications. Not the sleepless nights. Not the emergency room visits. Not the constant aching fear that he'd fall or forget to take a pill or lose his breath. "None of this is easy," I said. "I'm doing the work that none of you have showed up for." Another look passed between them. Then my mother stepped closer, lowering her voice like she wanted to seem compassionate. "Honey, we think he needs professional care." My pulse stopped. "No," I said instantly. "It's not safe for him here," she continued softly, as if rehearsing lines she'd practiced in the car. "Not with just you." Heat shot through me, cold and sharp all at once. "He's safe with me." "We're not sure," she said gently. My breathing quickened. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Brooke cleared her throat. "We've been researching assisted living facilities." I felt the world sway. They wanted to take him away. They wanted to move him. Not because he needed more care. But because moving him would give them control. Control over his environment. Control over his papers. Control over his mind. And control over the will. "No," I said again, firmer. "He's not going anywhere." My mother's expression hardened at the sound of finality in my voice. Lily, she said, you don't get to make that decision. I do if I'm the one caring for him, I shot back. You won't be for long, Aunt Melanie muttered. I turned toward her sharply. What does that mean? She looked smug. Too smug. And suddenly I knew. They hadn't come to check on him. They weren't here out of concern. They were here to evaluate. To strategize. To plant deeper doubts. To start the process of removing me. I think it's best if you go, I said quietly. We're not leaving, my mother replied. You are, I insisted. He's tired. You'll upset him. We're family, Brooke said with a bitter edge. We have every right to be here. You're not helping him, I said. You're confusing him. No, Aunt Melanie corrected. We're protecting him. And with that she brushed past me and headed up the stairs. Stop, I said, grabbing the rail. He needs rest. But then I heard it. My grandfather's frail voice calling from upstairs. Who's here? The sound was strained, nervous, brittle. The sound of a man who wasn't prepared for company. A man who didn't want a crowd. My mother shot me a victorious look. Brooke followed. And suddenly I found myself standing there, completely powerless as they marched into his room one by one. I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out their voices. At first. But then the tone shifted. Grew louder. Sharper. More insistent. I couldn't hear the words but I recognized the rhythm. Persuasion. Coaxing. Manipulation. The same rhythm they had used on him before. They weren't checking on him. They were cornering him. And that was when it hit me, hard, sharp, and unmistakable. This wasn't a visit. This was a coordinated attack. And they weren't planning to leave until they had convinced him of something. Something big. Something irreversible. I took a step toward the stairs. But before I could reach the top, I heard my grandfather cry out in a voice I hadn't heard in years. Stop. Just stop. And then, I can't do this. One of you is lying to me. My blood ran cold. Because I knew exactly who he meant. And I knew exactly who they were going to blame. Me. I took the stairs 2 at a time. By the time I reached the top landing, the air in my grandfather's bedroom felt charged, sharp, electric, like the moment right before a storm breaks. My mother, aunt, and Brooke were standing around his bed in a semicircle, closing him in like he was prey. Grandpa's face was pale. His breathing unsteady. His hands trembling slightly on the blanket. He looked overwhelmed. Cornered. Utterly exhausted. What's going on? I demanded, stepping into the room. 3 heads snapped toward me in perfect synchronization. 3 sets of eyes filled with practiced concern and thinly veiled satisfaction. We're having a family discussion, my mother said. You weren't invited. I ignored her and went straight to Grandpa. Are you okay? He didn't answer right away. Instead he looked between me and them, back and forth, like he was watching 2 versions of reality collide, unsure which one to trust. Aunt Melanie spoke first. Henry, she said in that condescending tone she always reserved for people she believed she outranked, you asked a fair question. And we're trying to help you get the answer. My chest tightened. What question? My mother turned to him gently, brushing a hand over his blanket. Go ahead, Dad. Tell her what you just told us. I looked at him, really looked at him. His jaw was clenched. His eyes looked wet. He was searching for words, fighting through emotion, through confusion, through fear. Finally he whispered. I said, that someone in this family, is lying to me. A cold shiver ran up my spine. Before I could speak, Brooke stepped forward, her voice trembling in a way that was clearly rehearsed. And we told him that it's not us. I stared at her. Excuse me. We know it's not us, she repeated firmly. So that leaves. Brooke, I warned. But she didn't stop. You. The room went silent. My breath caught, my pulse roaring in my ears. You think I'm the one lying? My mother folded her arms. We know you are. Grandpa flinched at her certainty. That was the moment I realized just how deeply they had sunk their hooks into him. How exactly do you know that? I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. Brooke inhaled dramatically. Grandpa told us that you denied ever asking about the will. My stomach twisted violently. What are you talking about? I said. I never asked about his will. My mother shook her head, eyes dripping with staged pity. Lily, he told us you brought it up. No, I said sharply. I didn't. Aunt Melanie stepped in with that smug, triumphant smirk she always wore when she thought she had the upper hand. He clearly remembers you asking him about the will last week. He said you seemed curious. My heart was pounding now. Last week, the only conversation I'd had with him about paperwork was reminding him to sign a consent form for his cardiologist. That was it. That's a lie, I said. I never asked about his will. Ever. My mother tilted her head. Why are you getting so defensive if he didn't do anything? Oh please, I said. You're twisting his memory and you know it. We're twisting nothing, she replied smoothly. He told us himself. And if he misremembered, well, that only proves he needs proper supervision. There was the laid perfectly. Either I had asked about the will, or Grandpa's memory was slipping. And both outcomes served their agenda. I stepped closer to him. Grandpa, look at me. You know me. You know my heart. Did I ever ask you about your will? His eyes lifted to mine. Pain. Confusion. Doubt. Doubt that they had planted. I remember you asking about paperwork, he said slowly. And I assumed. I exhaled sharply. That's not what I asked. I asked if you needed help signing the cardiologist form. That's the only paperwork we talked about. He blinked. The form. I remember the form. My mother cut in immediately. See? She's manipulating the story. Brooke nodded, trying to confuse him. Aunt Melanie folded her hands primly. Classic guilt tactic. My vision blurred with anger. Stop talking about me like I'm not in this room. We're talking to Grandpa, Aunt Melanie snapped. Not to you. No, I said coldly. You're talking for him. There's a difference. My mother took a step closer, lowering her voice like she wanted the next words to sink into him. Dad, sweetie, you have to see what's happening. Lily is young. She doesn't have money. She's living here rent-free. She has no reason to accept her future unless there's something in it for her. A white-hot flash went through me. That wasn't concern. That wasn't protection. That was a setup. She's positioning herself, Brooke added. Trying to look like a saint so she gets everything when, you know. My chest tightened. I'm positioning myself? Are you serious? That's exactly what you're doing, Aunt Melanie said. And we're not going to sit back and let you isolate him. I'm not isolating him. I exploded. Then why, my mother shot back, has he been avoiding our calls? Because you overwhelm him. Because you don't tell him when we call. My jaw dropped. Are you insane? I always tell him. Brooke shook her head. Funny. He swears he hasn't gotten half of them. I felt like I'd been punched. He looked away. The realization hit me like a wave. He believed them. At least some part of him did. I always tell you when they call, I said softly, my voice cracking. Always. He closed his eyes. I don't know what's real anymore. My heart broke. Aunt Melanie placed a hand on his arm. That's why we're here, Henry. To protect you. Then she turned to me and for the first time she didn't bother hiding it. The smugness. The satisfaction. The victory. You need to leave, she said. The floor dropped out from under me. What? You heard me, she said. You're upsetting him. He can't keep doubting himself like this. All this confusion started when you moved in. That's not true. We think it's best, my mother said firmly, if you pack your things and go home. My home is here, I said. With my grandfather. Brooke stepped forward. Not anymore. I stared at all three of them. They had coordinated this. Planned this. Perfected this attack. And now they were trying to remove me entirely. Grandpa looked between us. 3 accusing faces and 1 desperate one. He looked scared. Lost. And utterly torn. He whispered, barely audible. Maybe it's best if you give us some space, Lily. His voice cracked at the end. Just slightly. Just enough for me to hear the part he didn't say. I don't want you to go. But I don't know what to believe anymore. And that nearly broke me. Because in that moment, standing in his room with every lie they told him swirling in the air, I realized this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a war. And they were willing to destroy our relationship completely to get what they wanted. And I had no idea yet just how far they were willing to go. I didn't leave. Not that day. Not after the way my grandfather's voice trembled, not after the way he looked at me, as if he desperately wanted me to fight for him, even if he couldn't say it out loud. Even if he didn't fully know what the truth was anymore. But I did step out of the room. I stepped into the hallway so he wouldn't see the tears burning behind my eyes. I needed a minute. Just 1 minute to collect myself before going back in. Before defending myself again. Before reminding him who I was. But that minute was all they needed. I had barely made it halfway down the stairs when I heard the door to his room click shut behind me. Then voices. Oh, urgent. Conspiratorial. I turned around slowly. Walked back up. Stopped just outside the closed door. And listened. I hadn't planned to. I didn't want to. But the anger, the hurt, the helplessness, all of it pulled me toward that door like gravity. You know she's manipulating you, Aunt Melanie whispered. Grandpa's voice was thin. I don't want to believe that. Then don't believe it, my mother coaxed. Believe us. We're your daughters. You've known us for 60 years, Brooke added. And she's only been here 9 months, Aunt Melanie said. Think about that. 9 months versus your entire life with us. My hands curled into fists. They weren't just poisoning his trust. They were trying to rewrite reality. My mother continued, Dad, you're confused lately. There's no shame in that. But it means you can be easily influenced. Brooke's voice dropped to a whisper. We're worried she's waiting for you to, to die, Aunt Melanie finished flatly with no hesitation at all. My chest constricted. I forced myself not to shove the door open. If I burst in now, they'd use my anger as proof. So I stayed still. Very still. Grandpa's voice trembled. Lily has been good to me. That's exactly why it's suspicious, my mother said smoothly. People who want something are always the kindest. That was it. That was the line that nearly sent me through that door. Because I knew with every inch of me, that my mother wasn't talking about me. She was talking about herself. She always had been. Brooke chimed in. She acts sweet, but she's isolating you. You hardly talk to us anymore. That's not her fault, he said weakly. My mother jumped on that. But it's still happening. Don't you see? She's creating distance so that when the time comes, she's the only one you trust. Dad, Brooke whispered, pretending to choke up. We're scared she's positioning herself to take control of everything. Everything. There it was. The word that sat like a rotten seed at the root of all of this. Not his safety. Not his health. Not his well-being. Everything. His house. His savings. His accounts. His will. His entire life. My breath caught when I heard him speak again, barely audible. She says she loves me. My mother didn't miss a beat. Of course she says that. It's part of the act. An act. An act. I pressed a hand to my mouth to keep myself from making a sound. Because if I let one sound escape, I would break the whole house open. And then Aunt Melanie delivered the killing blow. Dad, if you keep letting her influence you, she could get power of attorney. She could make decisions behind your back. She could take your assets. She could sign legal papers without you even knowing. That's not true, he whispered, but his voice sounded small. That's why we're here, my mother said. To protect you. We need to get ahead of this before she does something irreversible. Brooke added softly, we think it's time to update the paperwork. My pulse hammered in my ears. Update the paperwork. Code 4. Rewrite the will. Remove me entirely. Place themselves in control of everything. I gripped the railing so tightly the wood dug into my palms. Inside the room, my grandfather whispered, I'm tired. We know, my mother said. That's why we're going to take care of everything today. So you don't have to worry. I stepped back slowly, heart pounding harder with every word. They weren't just trying to manipulate him emotionally. They were trying to isolate him legally. To strip me from his life. To erase my place in this house. To erase the truth. To erase me. I turned and walked down the stairs. This time not because I needed a minute, but because I realized exactly what was happening. They were preparing to take him away. And if I didn't stop them, I'd lose him. Not after he died. But now. While he was still alive. Still breathing. Still mine. I walked into the kitchen, sat at the small wooden table and forced myself to breathe. Slow. controlled. Because for the first time since moving in with Grandpa, I wasn't just the caregiver anymore. I wasn't just the granddaughter anymore. I was the threat. Not because of anything I'd done, but because loving him meant standing in the way of what they wanted. And they weren't going to let that happen. Not without a fight. When they finally came downstairs, their faces were arranged into those perfect little masks they always wore. Tight smiles, soft voices, a rehearsed gentleness that fooled everyone except the person who knew them best. Me. My mother was the first to appear. She smoothed her blouse, plastered on a fragile-looking smile and said, "Lily, sweetie, we're going to take Grandpa out for some fresh air." Aunt Melanie chimed in behind her. "A little drive will do him good. Clear his mind." A drive. With the three of them. Without me. I felt my stomach knot. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Oh, just around," my mother replied lightly. "A scenic drive. Maybe stop for coffee." I looked at her for a long, tense moment. She wasn't blinking. She wasn't breathing. She wasn't telling the truth. "Does Grandpa want to go?" I asked. She hesitated just for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. "He agreed," she said. "Not he wants to. Just he agreed." Which meant he was too tired to argue. Or too confused. Or too afraid to say no. I stepped closer to the stairs. "I'll get his coat." "No," Brooke said quickly, appearing at the bottom step with her purse slung over her shoulder. "We already grabbed it." I stared at her. She stared back. Her eyes cold and certain. For the first time, I realized she didn't see me as her little cousin anymore. She saw me as competition. "Lily," my mother said gently, "we need family time. Just us. You've had plenty of alone time with him." Plenty. The word stung. "Besides," Aunt Melanie added, "he gets confused when there are too many people around. It's better if you stay here." "Better for who?" Before I could answer, Grandpa appeared at the top of the stairs, holding the rail with both hands. He looked exhausted. Gray. Pagan. "Lily," he called softly. I moved toward him, but my mother threw an arm out, blocking me. "Dad," she said, forcing a bright smile, "the girls are helping you downstairs. Don't worry about anything." She turned back to me, lowering her voice. "We need privacy today. Please respect that." The way she said privacy made my skin crawl. Because I finally understood what this drive actually was. A chance to get him alone. To talk without me around. To push him harder. To twist things further. To get him to sign something. Or to get him to say something they could use against me later. I stood frozen in the doorway as they helped him down the stairs. 3 sets of hands, 3 voices murmuring reassurance, 3 smiles that didn't reach their eyes. When they reached the bottom step, Grandpa hesitated. His gaze flicked to me. Said, confused. Apologetic. "Lily," he whispered. Just my name. But everything he meant was inside it. I wanted to go to him. To take his hand. To shield him from what I knew was coming. But they swarmed around him like a wall. Like a fortress. My mother kissed his cheek. "Come on, Dad. The air will help you think clearly." Aunt Melanie smoothed his hair. "You'll feel so much better afterward." Brooke took his arm. "We just want what's best for you." I nearly said it out loud. "Oh, you don't." But the words lodged in my throat. Because no matter how much I fought, no matter how much truth I spoke, I was still just the granddaughter. And they were still his children. They guided him to the door. He walked slowly, shakily, stopping every few steps to catch his breath. Before stepping outside, he turned his head slightly, just enough for me to see his face. He looked afraid. And that was when I realized this truth, as sharp and terrifying as anything I'd faced since moving here. He didn't want to go. He just didn't know how to say no to them anymore. The door closed behind them. The car engine started. The tires crunched over the gravel. And then the driveway fell silent. I stood in the middle of the hallway, the house suddenly too big, too quiet, too empty. I had one overwhelming thought. They were taking him somewhere he wouldn't feel safe. Somewhere they could control the conversation. Somewhere they could get inside his head without me there to ground him. And then half an hour later, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We're at Suncrest Memory and Wellness Center. Temporarily evaluating Henry for cognitive decline." My blood ran cold. Suncrest. Memory. Evaluation. Temporarily. Every word was a knife. Because this wasn't a scenic drive. This wasn't coffee. This wasn't family time. This was a trap. A coordinated, strategic, utterly cold-blooded attempt to legally remove me from his life. And maybe even from his home. Once and for all. I drove to Suncrest so fast I don't remember the streets. I don't remember the stoplights. I don't remember breathing. All I remember is that text message replaying in my mind like a siren. Temporarily evaluating Henry for cognitive decline. Temporarily. As if temporary made it less horrifying. The building itself sat behind tall hedges, sterile and polite, the kind of place families chose when they didn't want to face the burden of aging parents. The receptionist greeted me with a forced smile, but when I said my grandfather's name, the smile froze halfway on her face. "Oh," she said, her voice dropping. "He's in consultation right now." Consultation. Not appointment. Not checkup. Consultation. "Who brought him?" I asked. He swallowed. 3 women. They said they were his primary family contacts. Of course they did. "I want to see him," I said. "I'm sorry," she replied, shifting nervously. "Family consultations are private." "I am family." She hesitated, just long enough for me to know she had been instructed not to let me through. I took a slow breath. "Where is he?" She blinked, debating whether to lie, but something in my face must have told her I wasn't in a mood for bureaucracy. "Second floor," she whispered. "Room 214. I didn't thank her. I didn't wait for permission. I just moved. The hallway upstairs smelled like antiseptic and lemon cleaner. It was too quiet, too orderly, the kind of quiet that didn't feel peaceful but instead, controlled. And then I heard it. Not words. A sound. My grandfather's voice. Thin, shaky, confused. "I don't understand why I'm here." My heart clenched. I turned the corner and saw them. My mother. Aunt Melanie. Brooke. All standing around him in a semicircle, again, like vultures around prey, talking in soft, urgent voices to the doctor in the room. A doctor who held a clipboard with my grandfather's name at the top. A clipboard that held his future. I stepped into the doorway. And the temperature in the room changed. "Lily," my mother said tightly. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I said. Aunt Melanie crossed her arms. "We brought him for an evaluation. He's been confused and agitated. We're concerned for his safety." "You're concerned for his will," I shot back. Brooke gasped in fake outrage. "How dare you?" Grandpa looked at me, eyes wide and frightened. "Lily, I don't know what's happening. They said this was just a checkup." My mother placed a hand on his shoulder. "Dad, please. We told you, this is just to help us understand how best to care for you." I turned to the doctor, forcing myself to stay calm. "Hi. I'm Lily Thompson. Henry's granddaughter. I live with him. I'm his primary caregiver." The doctor blinked. Confused. Surprised. "Primary caregiver?" he repeated. "Yes," I said. "For the past 9 months." He looked at my mother. "You didn't mention that." She smiled tightly. "It wasn't relevant." "Not relevant?" I said, incredulous. "I manage his medication. His appointments. His meals. His daily care." Aunt Melanie gave a small laugh. "She's exaggerating. She stays in her room half the day." "I work remotely," I said. "And when I'm not working, I'm taking care of him." Brooke rolled her eyes. "You're making yourself sound like a saint." "I'm making myself sound like the person who's actually present," I snapped. The doctor flipped through the papers on the clipboard. "It says here that Mr. Thompson has been isolated. That you girls," he nodded to my mother, aunt, and Brooke, "are his main support system." Isolated. Support system. The lies were written in pen. On forms. On statements. On medical intake documents. Who filled out those forms? I demanded. My mother offered her most innocent smile. "We all contributed." The doctor frowned slightly and looked at Grandpa. "Mr. Thompson, do you feel isolated at home?" I don't know," he whispered. My chest tightened. "Dad," my mother said softly, "you told us she keeps you from answering the phone." "I did," he murmured, confused. "You said she hides messages," Brooke added. "What?" I turned toward him. "That's not true, Grandpa, you know that's not true." He winced at the sharpness of my voice and guilt sliced through me. I lowered my tone immediately. You know I never hide anything from you, I said softly. Please, think. I don't know, he repeated even quieter. I don't remember everything. And that was the wedge they needed. My mother stepped in quickly. This is why the evaluation is necessary. Necessary for what? I demanded. To determine, Aunt Melanie said with a satisfied smile, whether Henry can remain in his home. My heart dropped. And, Brooke added, whether he's making decisions independently, or being influenced. Influenced. They were using that word against me. Weaponizing it. The doctor, who was beginning to look uncomfortable, turned to Grandpa again. Henry, he said gently, why don't we talk privately for a moment? No, I said immediately. Absolutely not. My mother whirled on me. You don't get to decide that. The hell I don't, I snapped. I live with him. I take care of him. You don't get to drag him into a memory clinic behind my back and call that love. We're trying to help him, Brooke shot back. You're trying to control him, I countered. Aunt Melanie laughed coldly. Projection looks good on you. The doctor held up his hands. Let's all take a breath. But before he could finish, Grandpa pressed both palms to his temples. Stop, he whispered. Please, just stop. The room went silent. He looked up at me with watery eyes. Lily, I want you here. Then he turned to them. And I want you three to leave. My mother's face drained of color. Dad, you don't mean that. I do, he said firmly. You brought me here under false pretenses. You didn't tell me what this was. Brooke's mouth fell open. We were trying to protect you. He shook his head. No. Lily protects me. You confuse me. Aunt Melanie sputtered. Henry, this is ridiculous. Leave, he repeated. This time his voice was stronger. Clear. Undeniable. They froze. The doctor cleared his throat awkwardly. Perhaps it's best if we reschedule. But Grandpa lifted a trembling hand. No. I'm done for today. I'm going home. With my granddaughter. And just like that, the battle cracked. Not finished. Not won. But cracked. As my family filed out, angry, humiliated, whispering to each other like snakes, I stepped to Grandpa's side and took his arm gently. He didn't pull away. Not this time. And when he looked at me, the doubt, the fear, the hesitation, they weren't gone. But they were weakened. As he had seen something today. Not everything. Not the whole truth. But enough. Enough to know they weren't the saints they pretended to be. Enough to wonder what else they'd lied about. And enough to take one small step back toward me. Just one. But that was all I needed. Because trust doesn't rebuild all at once. It rebuilds one moment at a time. And this was the moment everything started to turn. By the time we got home from Suncrest, my grandfather was trembling with exhaustion. Not from the car ride. Not from the walk inside. Not even from the stress of the evaluation that should have never happened. He was trembling because for the first time he'd seen behind the curtain. He'd seen what they were capable of. I helped him onto the couch, draped a blanket over his knees and set a glass of water beside him. He closed his eyes for a moment, one hand pressed to his chest as he took slow, careful breaths. You're okay, I whispered. You're home. He nodded faintly. Thank you. I sat beside him, not touching him, not crowding him, just giving him space to gather himself. After a long stretch of silence, he spoke. Lily, he murmured, voice hoarse, I'm sorry. I turned toward him. For what? For believing them, he said. Even for a minute. My throat tightened. Grandpa, it's not your fault. He swallowed. Hard. Maybe not. But it felt real. They were so certain. So convincing. And when a man is old and tired, certainty can sound like truth. I didn't interrupt. I let him speak. They've told me so many things these past few months, he continued, staring at his hands. About you. About your intentions. Your future. Your patience. The word patience trembled on his tongue as if he hated even repeating it. Sometimes, he whispered, I catch myself wondering if I misremembered something you said. Or if I misunderstood a look on your face. Or if they know something I don't. He exhaled shakily. That's what frightens me the most. Not that they lied, but that I believed them. That I doubted my own judgment. I placed my hands in my lap, palms flat so I wouldn't reach for him too quickly. I'd never hurt you, I said softly. He nodded. I know that now. He paused, then corrected himself. I always knew. But they made me doubt. The honesty in his voice broke something inside me. He looked at me not with suspicion, not anymore, but with regret. Lily, I don't want to be manipulated. By anyone. I don't want to hand over my life while I'm still capable of living it. I smiled sadly. Then you won't. But I need your help, he said. My breath caught. I need you to help me think clearly. To help me see what's true and what isn't. I need you to tell me when they're twisting my words. When they're pushing me. When they're trying to take pieces of me while I'm still here. He squeezed his eyes shut, shaking his head. I don't want to be a burden to you. You're not, I said immediately. You say that because you're kind. No, I replied. I say that because you're my grandfather. His eyes glistened with tears. I don't know how this happened. When did my own children become strangers to me? I could have answered. I could have told him the truth. I could have said that they hadn't become strangers. They had always been who they were. It just took illness and aging to expose it. But that wasn't what he needed to hear. So instead I said, sometimes people show who they truly are when they think no one is watching. He nodded. Fully. Then he whispered the words I never expected to hear. I want to review my will. I froze. It wasn't the request that shocked me. It was the clarity in his voice. The certainty. The steadiness. No doubt. No wavering. No fear. Just resolve. Okay, I said quietly. But only if you're sure. He looked at me with eyes that were suddenly sharp. Sharp the way they used to be in his younger days, when he built his business from nothing and didn't let anyone push him around. I am. A shudder went through me. Do you want to call your lawyer? I asked. He shook his head. Not yet. His next words froze me in place. I want to hear the truth first. The truth. I echoed. He nodded. Not from you. Not from them. From myself. He reached for the blanket over his knees with trembling fingers. There are things I've ignored, he said softly. Signs. Patterns. Moments I brushed aside. Gifts that never reached you. Checks that disappeared. Messages that got lost. My heart clenched. He knew. Somewhere inside him he had always known. He just never had to face it. Not until today. I want to go through everything, he said. The papers. The records. The accounts. All of it. He looked at me with a small, sad smile. And I want you to sit with me. Not to tell me what to think, but so I'm not alone when I find the truth. Of course, I whispered. Anything you need. He nodded, and for the first time all day he breathed easily. Then he leaned back against the couch cushion and said the words that told me everything was about to change. I trusted the wrong people for too long. It's time I stopped doing that. As he rested his eyes, I sat beside him in silence, feeling something shift in the room. Not just between us. Not just in the house. Inside him. The fog was clearing. The doubt was fading. And the truth, slow, heavy, undeniable, was beginning to surface. Today they'd almost erased me. They'd revealed themselves. No. Now the reckoning was coming. We started the next morning. Just after sunrise, before coffee, before breakfast, before either of us had time to doubt the decision. Grandpa insisted on beginning immediately. I want to look at everything while my mind is clear, he said, tapping the edge of the dining table. Before they show up again. Okay, I whispered. Let's start. I brought out the fireproof box he kept tucked in his closet, the one that held decades of life inside it. Paper by paper. Folder by folder. Evidence of who he was, what he'd built, and how he'd cared for his family. The box was heavy. So much heavier than I expected. Not with weight, but with history. We spread everything across the table. Old tax returns. Insurance policies. Receipts. Binder clips. Handwritten notes. Bank statements. Photocopies of checks. Letters he'd kept for decades. He leaned forward, his reading glasses perched crookedly on his nose. All right, he murmured. Let's see what's been going on. For hours we worked. I read aloud what he asked me to read. He read silently what his eyes could still pick up. Sometimes he paused. Sometimes he frowned. Sometimes his hands shook. And every time he found a gap, an inconsistency, a missing piece, a gift that was never acknowledged, he asked one question. Did you ever receive this? Every time the answer hit him with the weight of years. No, Grandpa. I didn't. A $2,000 check from when I was 17. Never cashed by me. A birthday transfer meant for me, sent to my mother instead. A deposit he made into my education fund. Never added to any account I owned. A savings bond in my name, cashed without my knowledge. A letter he wrote to me years ago, opened then resealed. My God, he whispered, staring at the torn corner of the envelope. I thought you ignored this. I never saw it, I said. His jaw clenched. A muscle in his cheek twitched. Slowly, painfully, the pattern began to surface. Not one incident. Not one misunderstanding. Not one mistake. A system. A pipeline. Money and gifts flowing from him to my mother. And stopping there. Never reaching me. Never meant to. At one point he set a check down. A birthday gift from my grandmother long past, and pressed both palms against his forehead. I asked her if you ever thanked us, he whispered hoarsely. So many times. And she always had an excuse. Lily's busy. Lily forgot. Lily doesn't care about money. She lied, I said softly. He nodded. She lied, he repeated, his voice cracking. And I believed her. You trusted her, I whispered. Because she's your daughter. He looked up at me and the grief in his eyes was something I will never forget. It's worse than that, he said quietly. I doubted you. My breath caught. I doubted my own granddaughter, he continued, his eyes shining with tears. The only one who has shown up for me. The only one who hasn't wanted anything. The only one who hasn't taken from me. I felt tears sting my own eyes. Grandpa, you didn't know. I should have, he said. I should have looked closer. I should have asked you directly. I should have wondered why you never seemed to have the things I gave you. He lifted a Christmas check from years ago, still attached to the carbon copy. $500. I thought you'd used it for books. I didn't even know it existed. He swallowed hard. Your mother told me you bought yourself a winter coat with it. My throat tightened. I wore the same coat for 5 years. He closed his eyes. A long silence filled the room. Then he did something I didn't expect. He reached across the table and took my hand. His hand was warm, steady now, firm despite his age. Lily, he said, looking directly into my eyes, I'm so sorry. Grandpa. No, he cut me off, his voice steady and full. I need to say this. I failed you. I let them twist my perception. I let them steal from you. And I let them poison the one relationship in my life that actually mattered. I shook my head. That's not true. It is, he insisted. But I'm going to fix it. Before I could respond, he gently released my hand and pulled a manila folder from the bottom of the pile. The will. His will. My heart thudded. He opened it, scanning the lines he had probably read dozens of times before. They think I don't see the way they look at me, he said. Like I'm already gone. Like I'm a door they're waiting to open. He tapped the paper lightly. And they think they know what's inside this. He looked up at me, eyes sharp. They don't. He slid the folder aside. Then he reached for his phone. Who are you calling? I asked. My attorney, he said simply. I want him here today. My heart jumped. Today. Yes. He straightened in his seat. If I wait, they'll come back. And they'll wear me down again. I'm not giving them another chance. I swallowed hard. What do you want to do? I asked quietly. He held my gaze. Make things right. There was something electric in the room then. Something powerful, something inevitable. The truth had broken through. The lies were unraveling. And he was choosing clarity over comfort. Today, he repeated firmly, I decide my own legacy. He paused, then added softer. And I want you to be here when I do. I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. Because in that moment, after months of fear, manipulation, doubt, and betrayal, I realized the truth. He didn't just see me again. He believed me. And that changed everything. His attorney arrived just after lunch. A tall man with silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the calm, measured presence of someone who had watched families tear each other apart for a living. He shook Grandpa's hand, then mine, then took a slow look around the dining room table covered in documents. "This looks serious," he said. "It is," Grandpa replied. They sat together at the table, the sunlight pooling through the kitchen window, landing directly across the folder labeled estate plan. I stayed nearby, paging through old receipts and photocopies, sorting what Grandpa asked me to sort, quiet but present, exactly how he wanted me. "Tell me what's going on," the attorney said gently. Grandpa took a long breath. "I've realized that I've been misled. Repeatedly. About my granddaughter. About my finances. About myself." The attorney nodded. "Who misled you?" "My daughters," Grandpa answered without hesitation. "And my granddaughter, Brooke." Hearing him say it aloud sent a shock through me, like something inside the house shifted, an echo of reality finally being spoken and accepted. "I see," the attorney murmured. "Tell me everything." And Grandpa did. He told him about the checks never reaching me, about the gifts that vanished, about the savings meant for my education that mysteriously disappeared, about the way they cornered him at Suncrest, pushing for an evaluation he didn't need, about the lies they told him, and the doubt they seeded in him. But the moment that broke him, the moment that broke me, was when he told the attorney this. "They made me think Lily was waiting for me to die, that she was here out of greed, that her kindness was a tactic." His voice shook. The attorney looked at me with a heaviness in his eyes. "And were you?" I shook my head. "I would give up everything I own if it meant he could live a longer, happier life." The attorney nodded once. A quiet, solemn gesture. "I believe you." Grandpa exhaled shakily, and for the first time in months, I saw something return to his face. Something I didn't realize I'd missed. Pride. In me. "Let's talk about your will," the attorney said gently. Grandpa straightened. "I want to change it." "What modifications are you thinking of?" Grandpa looked at me, then back at him. "I want Lily to inherit the house." My breath caught. "And the savings accounts," he added. The attorney raised a brow. "All of them?" "Yes." "Any other specific allocations?" Grandpa nodded. "I want a trust set aside for her education. I want her medical expenses covered if she ever needs help. And I want her to be able to stay in this home for as long as she chooses." I pressed a hand over my mouth. "Are you sure?" the attorney asked gently. Grandpa didn't hesitate. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "And your other daughters?" the attorney asked. Grandpa sighed heavily. "They'll receive what's fair. But not at the expense of the person who has actually taken care of me." The attorney made a few notes. "I'll draft the updated documents today. You can sign them tomorrow." Grandpa nodded. "Good." Then he paused. "Sweet, so. Let's do it today. Before they find out and try something else." A chill ran through me, not fear but recognition. He wasn't fragile anymore. He wasn't confused. He wasn't uncertain. He was awake. The attorney set everything up in the living room, placing the pages on a clipboard across Grandpa's lap. His hands trembled slightly at first but then steadied. "I want you to read everything," the attorney reminded him. "I will," Grandpa said. "Every word." And he did. He read line by line. Page by page. Clause by clause. He read slowly, methodically, with purpose. When he finished, he lifted the pen. I watched the moment with a tight chest, knowing how much this meant, how much weight it carried, how thoroughly it rewrote the future they thought they controlled. Grandpa signed. One page. Then the next. Then the next. When he finished, he handed the pen back to the attorney with a soft sigh. "It's done," he said. "Yes," the attorney replied. "It is." The finality of those words settled over the room. Grandpa leaned back on the sofa, closing his eyes. "I feel lighter." "You should," the attorney said. "You took control back." While he packed up, Grandpa reached for my hand quietly, deliberately, and squeezed it. "I trust you," he whispered. "Thank you for helping me see what I didn't want to see." Tears blurred my vision. "I love you, Grandpa." "I love you too, sweetheart." We sat there for a long moment, just breathing, holding hands, two people still trembling from the storm but finally stepping into the calm. And then, as if the universe couldn't let us have peace without a warning shot, headlights swept across the window. A car pulled into the driveway. Fast. Aggressive. I didn't need to look to know who it was. My mother. Aunt Melanie. Brooke. They were here. And they didn't know yet. They didn't know that the will was changed. That their plan had failed. That their control was gone. Grandpa opened his eyes and for the first time in months, he smiled. A real smile. Let them come, he murmured. It's too late now. The attorney stood, briefcase in hand, and nodded to me. Call me if they cause trouble. Oh, I said, they will. He gave a sympathetic look. Then call me sooner rather than later. I walked him out just as the three of them stepped from their car, their faces tight, their expressions sharp, their footsteps heavy with purpose. My mother opened her mouth. But before she could speak, Grandpa's voice came from the doorway behind me, strong, steady, and unmistakably in control. Patricia. Melanie. Brooke. Come inside. He paused. We need to talk. And I knew, absolutely knew, that this time, the truth would finally be louder than their lies. They filed into the living room like people walking into a courtroom, not a home. My mother's lips were pressed into a thin line. Aunt Melanie clutched her purse like it contained her last shred of power. Brooke hovered behind them, wide-eyed, her confidence drained as if she felt, really felt, that something enormous had shifted. Grandpa sat in his favorite chair. Calm, quiet, composed. The storm in him had passed. What remained was resolve. Dad, my mother began softly, we're worried. You left so abruptly yesterday. We just want to understand. He raised one hand. She froze mid-sentence. I had some thinking to do, he said. And some reviewing. And some correcting. Aunt Melanie stepped forward. Correcting what? I will, he said simply. The room went silent. All three faces changed at once. Shock twisting into fear, fear warping into anger. You what? Brooke whispered. I updated my estate plan, Grandpa said. Today. My mother let out a brittle laugh. Dad, honey, you were upset. You weren't thinking clearly. We should call the lawyer back in. I was thinking more clearly than I have in years. She blinked. But Dad. No, he said firmly. Not this time. No more talking over me. No more deciding for me. No more twisting my words or my intentions. Each sentence hit them like a slap. You lied to me, he continued. Repeatedly. About gifts. About money. About messages. About Lily. My mother's face went pale. Dad, we were just trying to help. You tried to isolate me from the one person who actually cares for me. You tried to make me think she was waiting for me to die. That she was manipulating me. He shook his head. But the truth is, she's the only one who hasn't manipulated me. Brooke stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Grandpa, please. He cut her off. Sit down. She sat. They all did. Then he said the words that cracked the room open. I am leaving the house to Lily. My mother gasped. You can't do that. I can, he replied calmly. And I did. Aunt Melanie's voice rose an octave. What about the savings? What about the inheritance? What about? They are mine to give, he said. They always have been. And I refuse to reward greed. Brooke looked like she might faint. So what do we get? The same thing Lily has gotten from you for years, he said coldly. Nothing. It wasn't anger in his voice. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. My mother stood up abruptly. This is insane. He's brainwashing you. She's taken advantage. She has taken care of me, Grandpa snapped. And I will not let you reframe her kindness as ambition. I know the difference now. The room went still. Painfully still. He clutched the arms of his chair, gathering his breath, then said, You three need to leave. And if you want a relationship with me going forward, it will be on my terms, and Lily's. They gaped at him, stunned. He nodded toward the door. Goodbye. For the first time in my life, they obeyed him without a fight. They left. And just like that, the house fell quiet again, but it was a different quiet. Not fearful. Not tense. Not filled with doubt. A peaceful quiet. After a moment, Grandpa turned to me. Lily, he said softly, I want you to have the life you deserve. Not the life they tried to force you into. I knelt beside him, taking his hand. Thank you, for believing me. He squeezed my fingers gently. Thank you for staying. We sat there in that calm sunlit room, the air finally light, the weight finally gone. And for the first time since I moved in, I felt safe. Not because of what he left me. Not because of the house. Not because of the inheritance. But because he chose the truth. He chose me. He chose fairness over fear. It wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of a life where I wasn't invisible. Where my love was seen. Where my loyalty mattered. Where I finally won something that couldn't be stolen. Respect. Trust. Family. The real kind. And as for the others? Some people think power comes from taking. But the older I get, the more I realize. The only power that really lasts comes from what you give. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you want more true confessions like this, more family drama, more justice being served, more stories where truth finally wins, please subscribe to Confessions with Amy. I'll see you in the next story.